All right, guys. Today we're going to be reacting to the biggest flaw in liberal arguments explained by Thomas Sowell. Jump in.
What sparked this particular book for you?
I guess, in a sense, getting tired of arguing the same arguments in different guises over and over on issue after issue, and realizing there's a certain underlying pattern of beliefs, assumptions about the world, about people, and that what we really need to do is look at some of those assumptions and the kinds of conclusions they lead to. And more than that, the extent to which that mindset is resistant to empirical evidence.
Where do you come down on something like the issue is welfare? What are the givens in the welfare debate that you would argue with?
Oh, great. Now, I happen to be one of the few people in the country who is not an expert on welfare.
Okay.
You know, you'd have to spend a great deal of time doing some serious research before getting into that. I would think that as long as you're going to reward teenage girls with their own apartments and their own independent source of income for getting pregnant, you've added to the existing incentives for getting pregnant.
What about prisons?
Again, I would look at that. That's much easier. That when you lock people up, there are fewer crimes. A few years ago, East Palo Alto, which is not far from Stanford, a low-income minority community, had the distinction of being the murder capital of the United States in proportion to its small population. A year later, murders, burglaries, violent crimes were down something of the order of 30 to 50% in 1 year, which is virtually unheard of. And there were not any great social programs. They did not discover the root causes of crime. They simply started locking people up. And even in a high crime area, most of the people
Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Problem solved. Just start locking people up.
are not criminals. And so if you lock
My
up
God.
a relatively small percentage of people, the crime rate falls off dramatically.
What about gun control?
Doesn't work.
I would much rather control the people who use the guns than try to control the guns. First of all, there are so many guns out there. I mean, I think the very word is really misleading. I don't know how well you can control something of which there are perhaps a couple of 100 million in circulation at this moment. Now, if the criminals would cooperate and come in and turn in their guns, I think this might be a nice idea. I have a suspicion that they're not going to do that.
Isn't that funny? This is what they don't understand. You take the guns away or you create gun control, you're not affecting the criminal. The criminal already participate in illegal activities. How in the hell gun control is so all of a sudden stop illegal guns? Think about it, folks.
Competition.
The anointed think that competition is something optional. And so in the school systems, they try to de-emphasize competition. It never occurs to them that competition is inherent. That the very reason we're alive at this moment is
Because of
that
competition.
our white blood cells and other defenses are winning the competition for the nutrients in our body and for the other things that are keeping us alive. And once they start losing that, we're on our way out. So competition is always there. The only question is whether or not we choose to recognize it.
Chapter 5 of your book is the anointed versus the benighted. What's the difference?
Well, the benighted are, of course, people like myself who disagree with the anointed. But I think what it says is that they put themselves on a different moral plane. And so people like me are regarded as being not merely in error, but in sin. So it's not enough to say that, Sowell may be all right, but I don't agree with his views. It must be shown that I am a terrible person. I guess the classic example of this is the demonizing of Clarence Thomas.
Oh, yeah.
People don't say, gee, Clarence Thomas is a nice guy, but I can't agree with his politics or his judicial philosophy. I say, this is absolutely a monster, et cetera, et cetera.
One of the most important questions about any proposed course of action is whether we know how to do it. Policy A may be better than policy B, but that does not matter if we simply do not know how to do policy A. Perhaps it would be better to rehabilitate criminals rather than punish them if we knew how to do it. Rewarding merit might be better than rewarding results if we knew how to do it. But one of the crucial differences between those with the tragic vision and those with the vision of the anointed is in what they respectively assume that we know how to do. Those with the vision of the anointed are seldom deterred by any question as to whether anyone has the knowledge required to do what they are attempting. As we have already seen, when President Lyndon Johnson spoke of addressing the conditions that breed urban violence, he said, "All of us know what those conditions are: ignorance, discrimination, slums, poverty, disease, not enough jobs." Similarly, when the New York Times editorially expressed dismay at statistics on high infant mortality rates in the United States, it declared, "America already knows how to make the rate drop again." With these and innumerable other issues, the question for the anointed is not knowledge, but compassion, commitment, and other such subjective factors, which supposedly differentiate themselves from other people. The refrain of the anointed is, "We already know the answers. There's no need for more studies." And the kinds of questions raised by those with other views are just stalling and obstructing progress. Solutions are out there waiting to be found, like eggs at an Easter egg hunt. Intractable problems with painful trade-offs are simply not part of the vision of the anointed. Problems exist only because other people are not as wise or as caring, or not as imaginative and bold as the anointed. If there was one defining moment of the 1960s, it might well have been at the Judicial Conference in 1965, when Justices Brennan and Warren roared with laughter as a law professor poured scorn and ridicule on the concerns of a former police commissioner about the effects of recent judicial rulings on law enforcement and public safety. It was the anointed in their classic role of disdaining the benighted and dismissing the very possibility that the unintended ramifications of morally inspired...
And remember, doing this was in the 1990s, right? Crime was bad, folks. But police was way, way more strict than what is today. Imagine, oh my God, imagine thinking that this will become to a place where you even have Seattle and Portland almost declaring an insurrection in those cities. I mean, and nobody got arrested, by the way.
...decisions might make matters worse. Far more important than particular reckless policies, even those with such deadly consequences as weakening the criminal law, is a whole mindset in which omnicompetence is implicitly assumed and unhappy social phenomena are presumed to be unjustified morally and remediable intellectually and politically. Inherent constraints of circumstances or people are brushed aside, as are alternative policy approaches which offer no special role for the anointed. The burden of proof is not put on their vision, but on existing institutions. The notion that society must justify itself before the bar of reason presupposes that there is some individual or group capable of such encyclopedic knowledge and such mastery of the structured principles of so many disciplines as to make such judgments across a broad spectrum and at a speed that would...
None of these people have any idea, right? Any idea how this thing works, man. Nobody. None of them has any idea how this thing works, man. And they were here just voting.
...fit all these judgments into one lifetime. Those with sweeping schemes for reconstructing society seldom pause to ask about the sufficiency of anyone's knowledge for such a task. Carl Menninger, for example, said, "The immediate task of our time seems to be to think out our economic organization in dynamic terms and according to a strategy which will so coordinate the now prevailing tendencies that they will no longer conflict. The political problem, therefore, is to organize human impulses in such a way that they will direct their energy to the right strategic points and steer the total process of development in the desired direction." In other words, the only problem is political mobilization and social imagination, so as to result in a solution in which current tendencies will no longer conflict, rather than a mere trade-off in which their continuing conflicts will be dealt with as best one can. Nor was any time wasted worrying about the presumption of some people in preempting the decisions of others, these others' decisions being treated as mere impulses for the anointed to organize and direct toward what the anointed define as the right strategic points. Indeed, the whole process was analogized to engineering problems, with the designing of another type of human being included in this engineering. For, as Menninger noted, no economic order can be brought into existence as long as the corresponding human type does not emerge. In short, not only is the external world to be redesigned, so are the people who are to inhabit it. Were this merely the fantasy of one man, it would not be worth noting, but it is in fact part of the vision of the anointed, as it has existed for centuries. The idea of creating the kind of people needed for a new society goes at least as far back as William Godwin's Enquiry Concerning Political Justice in 1793, where he spoke of men as they may hereafter be made through a process of the improvement of mankind, which he thought would be in the utmost degree simple. 2 centuries later, the task appears less simple, and such expressions as brainwashing and re-education camps have chilling overtones in the light of history, though that has not stopped indoctrination efforts in American schools and colleges, led by those who still have the vision of the anointed today. By contrast, those with the tragic...
Yeah, anointed is what I'm thinking when he said anointed. It's like the communist, the Marxist. Oh my goodness. When you read when you hear a lot of this stuff, it just comes down to what happened to us. What happened to us? We became the weakest nation in just a matter of 20 years. A matter of nothing. I don't know if it has to do with testosterone or the 19th Amendment. I don't know what it is, man. But there's something that it's not making sense here, folks. We have been battling this for the longest. We haven't gone.
Vision have long questioned whether anyone, themselves included, knows enough to engage in sweeping social and political experiments. We cannot change the nature of things and of men, Edmund Burke said, but must act upon them the best we can. Adam Smith took a very similar position while seeing the more general issue as a conflict of visions between the doctrinaire with an ideal plan of government, who seems to imagine that he can arrange the different members of a great society with as much ease as the hand arranges the different pieces upon a chessboard, and the more modest reformer who will adjust his policies to the confirmed habits and prejudices of the people, and who, when he cannot establish the right, will not disdain to ameliorate the wrong. Those with the tragic vision might share the desire for social betterment, without sharing the assumptions as to how much knowledge and control of social ramifications exist. A succinct summary of the tragic vision was given by historians Will and Ariel Durant. Out of every 100 new ideas, 99 or more will probably be inferior to the traditional responses which they propose to replace. No one man, however brilliant or well-informed, can come in one lifetime to such fullness of understanding as to safely judge and dismiss the customs or institutions of his society. For these are the wisdom of generations after centuries of experiment in the laboratory of history. Severe limitations on the effectiveness of well-intentioned notions were likewise seen by Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, who said, "To improve conditions of life and the race is the main thing. But how the devil can I tell whether I am not pulling it down more in some other place? Doing good on some problem right under one's nose is not enough in a world of constrained options and systemic interactions, where the overlooked costs of immediate benevolence take their toll elsewhere." Holmes exemplified the tragic vision of life based on a tragic vision of human limitations. He spoke disdainfully of the vain attempt to love one's neighbor as oneself, of our legislation to make other people better, and of attempts to legislate bliss.
An economy involves trade-offs. Politics involves solutions, real or imaginary. And I think the best example of an imaginary solution in recent history is when Kamala Harris can deny that she was not put in charge of the border, but rather in charge of solving the root cause of immigration.
Which is a ghost. It is a ghost. You can literally solve this literally in a minute. But you want to just know what's the cause of the immigration problem.
The number one reason why people migrate is for better opportunities. So is she going to single-handedly boost the economy of Mexico to the point where migrants no longer have an incentive to leave their country?
Yep.
Talk about imaginary solutions. Indeed, the most important question is, do we know how to do it? This is very much in line with what we saw in our other video, the one question that destroys every liberal argument. You can check that here if you haven't yet watched that video. Thank you so much for watching. You let me know.
Man, I love this channel. Bro, yeah. I mean, we had to stop doing this. We had to just, as a country, we had to move forward to a place that we had to be objective of every solution. Objective. 100% objectivity. No subjectivity. We need to have solutions, not only solutions, but solutions that not only for short term, but long term. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your guys' opinion. I'll see you on the next one.